Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. And today my guest is Elizabeth McCourt. Elizabeth is multifaceted, multi-interesting, if that's a word. We just made that a word. She's got a TEDx talk. She is the head of a group called McCourt Leadership Group. She is a coach. She teaches at INSEAD. I'm sure I'm missing out a bunch of other stuff, but I'm more eager to get into the conversation. So you could look her up in the notes. So welcome aboard today, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Cool. So let's just dive in. So I think you're a recovering lawyer, if I read my notes right.
Yes, that is true.
So the only lawyers I know that, well, I shouldn't say the only, most of the lawyers I know that have a smile like yours and are happy and doing things they love, shockingly are not practicing law. So
I have found that as well.
With some exceptions, right?
True.
How does one go from, because to be a lawyer is a pretty deliberate, you don't just wake up one day and hang out a shingle, right? It's deliberate. There's lots of things you got to do, time, energy, effort, money. So how do you do all that and then wake up one day and say, oh, take this job and, blank, whatever?
My story is a little bit interesting because I was in investment banking after college and I didn't like that. And I thought, let me do something a little less stressful. And I went to law school. So it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, how'd that work out, right?
Yeah. And, interestingly, I was a trial lawyer and I worked for a firm and then I found that was not the right fit. And I worked for a solo practitioner who I loved. To this day, he still asks me if I'll come back. He's a wonderful guy in Santa Fe, New Mexico. But then my father got ill and I decided to temporarily 22 years ago, move back to New York. And therefore I wasn't licensed in New York.
Okay.
And so I tripped into recruiting, which then is a headhunter for financial services for, almost 2 decades. And then realized that my success was based on the fact that I was a coach. I just had a different style. And so then I pivoted again. So it's a bit of I like to say my next book, or the book I'm currently working on, is about the nonlinear path to success and how we navigate that. It's just not perfect the way we do our lives.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
So I want to talk about that because it's interesting. So headhunting is what paid the bills, but coaching is what you actually did, because the actual transaction of placing a good fit in a good, spot isn't the hard part, right? Per se. So you became a coach by not being a coach.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I just had a different style. 2 reasons. As my own style, I always want to be truthful with people and treat people the way I want to be treated. It sounds so trite, but I just believe in telling people the good and the bad. And I always had that approach in recruiting, which made people trust me because I wasn't just...
Well, they trust you because they're, at some degree, the traditional recruiting model is, let me sugarcoat how great it is to go work at company X and, oh, it's wonderful. I don't care what you've heard or Glassdoor or whatever. Trust me, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Exactly. And I personally, I just could not do it like that. I just need to sleep at night. It was big decisions for people. So inevitably, I would help them find the information they needed to make their decisions and coach them in that way. And I don't think I realized that was I was doing until I started pure coaching.
Sure.
That it just was very natural to me. My father was a coach and I did a lot of sports growing up. And I feel like it was just part of my DNA, but it was really just about me. I know what I want. Like, I could tell you want to have chocolate ice cream, but if you don't like chocolate ice cream, you're not going to have chocolate ice cream. So you have to decide what you want. And so that's always been my philosophy. And that's how I approach. Yeah.
2 things I want to touch on, but we'll do it in a nonlinear way, because one of the things I want to touch on is the nonlinear approach. But before we go there, so then we've got a TEDx talk of why you should spill your secrets. I'm trying to create like a random buffet here.
Yeah, sure. It's funny when I was headhunting after, headhunting is truly about money, and I was very successful in that business. I mean, that's really the game. And I came to a transition point of is this it? And someone suggested you should have a coach. And I said, that's ridiculous. I told people this, I go, that's ridiculous. But I said, but I'm desperate. I will try anything and I got a coach. And I thought she was incredible. I decided to do whatever she did. And in that path of becoming a coach, I realized that I wanted to be I wanted to be speaking, and I had just found out about these TEDx, and I thought they were so cool. And I said, someday I want to do one. I put it on my personal goal sheet. And I got an email from my alma mater, SUNY Stony Brook. It says, we're looking for applications. And I said, I took an essay. My TEDx is really based on an essay that I wrote as part of my MFA in writing. And I just really blew that up. And it's just about when you release the truth or a secret, then we realize we're not so different. We have more similarities than we are different. So it's just
very cool.
The vulnerability, being vulnerable.
Just sort of in that Brene Brown genre of
It
vulnerability.
is, and really that's what coaching is too. Is that you have to be a little bit vulnerable, and when you're vulnerable, you connect with people, and you can grow and learn.
So I want to go back to the nonlinear, because if there's one thing that 99% of my clients and the folks that we work with have in common, is their career has been nonlinear. Well, I should say probably 95%, because the academic we work with, that's very linear, but in the space of author, thought leader, expert, consultant, whatever, it's very rare that I haven't met anyone that says, yes, what do you want to be when you grow up, little Billy or Jane or whatever? It's, it's fireman, teacher, nurse. It's not consultant, coach, advisor, author, and sometimes, expert or something like that. Like, that's not a career path or a thing. And most people wind up in this space serendipitously, or just stuff happens. And then it's like, they wake up and like, oh my God, how did this happen? Like, it went from, I wrote one article and then somebody asked me to speak, and now I fly all over the country giving talks and doing this. This was not the plan. So tell me about sort of the ups and downs, like when to embrace sort of the nonlinear, and when you got to go, whoa, that's actually, sort of ADD gone wild.
Well, if someone has a creative approach, I like to do a collection of things and feel like it's all related somehow. But I do believe that everything that you've done brings you to where you are. Like, if I hadn't been a lawyer, if I hadn't done investment banking, if I hadn't gotten all of these things that I've done, actually make me better at what I do. And I don't think I recognize that, or maybe you don't recognize that until you kind of realize that you're allowed to leverage the entirety of your experience. We're never really, quote unquote, new at what we're doing. We might feel like that we haven't done it before, but we've had different experiences that allow us to sort of leverage those different points to move forward. And I really was I was giving a talk at University of Maryland for the business school. And I was like, oh gosh, everyone here, the two other panelists were linear. And I was like, well, I've done this and that.
Yeah,
and
right.
I thought,
right,
wow,
right.
I thought this is a little bit embarrassing. But I'm successful, but it's like it didn't go straight. And afterwards I realized that it was a huge sigh of relief to the MBA to realize that just because you didn't do 1 + 1 is 2, you didn't go on that straight path, does not mean failure. It's more of a wider breadth of experience. But like you said, I think sometimes we have to fail. Sometimes we go one direction and it doesn't work out, but you have to think, what can I learn from that? So I can either say, no way, I can pivot, or I can build upon it in a different way. So I think none of it is really, I think I look at failure that way. And I encourage people that just because you tried this and it didn't work, better to know soon than, invest, hundreds of thousands of dollars and have it tank.
Exactly.
Better to, I would say, do a side hustle, figure it out first before you go all in. And that's okay.
Exactly. If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. So I want to touch on the book that you're working on, and then I want to talk about sort of the overall business at McCourt. So you're in the process of writing a book, and you and I were chatting earlier, and we sort of joked, well, this is your second book, and I said, well, the first one doesn't count because it's fiction. we don't know what that is. So
that's right. Although they do say fiction helps your mind think. It was just an article, I think, in the Times or something about fiction being good for you.
Well, and there have been some really best-selling nonfiction books that it turned out in the end were fiction. So
that is also true. That is also true.
But in the traditional definition sense, you're in the process of writing your first business book. So
exactly.
So I want to understand sort of where you are in the process, and and this is the part that people are intrigued with, is sort of the decision making, right? So I think what happens is when people go into book mode, there's this learning curve of holy crap, like there's a whole, like I know what I want to write, how I want to write it, what I want to say. Like that part's almost easy, but do I self-publish? Do I go with the traditional publisher?
Oh, yeah.
I do what everybody said. Like, so what's your journey? What's your book to date story?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I feel like there are so many different options and none are bad. I mean, if you want to self-publish, there's no longer a stigma attached to self-publish.
So let's stay there for a minute. So I want to
Sure.
stay there for a minute because I think that's 1,000% true. And I think there is this old New York publishing house arrogance fallacy going on where it used to be 20 years ago that, if you self-publish, it sort of was saying, yeah, I got rejected by all the other pieces, but I'm a little vain or whatever. It is absolutely unequivocally not true today. I think I'm the only dork that I know that because I read most things on my Kindle, I go back to the filler pages to see who the publisher is, more out of curiosity.
Yeah, I do too.
Because, okay, so great. We would need a 12-step program for people that whatever.
Who's the agent? Who's the publisher? How they, what happened?
Yeah,
it's interesting.
No, but I'm looking at things in Publishers Weekly, but this is what we do, right? So, but most people, download a book, open it. These are the best of times. These are the worst. Like that's it, right? And it will either be a good book or it won't. It is very, 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 very rare today for a self-published book to look like the crapola that used to come out 20 years ago with, horrible printing and bad publishing. So I just wanted to validate the destigmatization.
Yeah,
I think it's primarily a business model issue. So
and also I felt a little snobby about it. I felt like if you couldn't get published traditionally, then maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was because of that. But I don't agree with that anymore. But I do think the most important thing to think about is what is your purpose of writing this book?
So is a purpose interchangeable with goal, or like what does success look like? Or because there's a purpose piece of I am writing this, there's an intrinsic, but then there's also understanding the extrinsic, because writing a book is an incredibly expensive process, whether you self-publish or not, because you're spending, if I were to say to you, Elizabeth, can I have 1,000 hours of your time? You'd say yes, and the invoice will be,
Exactly. Years of time. Please.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do think there is that question of what I learned in even publishing my novel of fiction is there's a distribution piece. So I think that is an important consideration. If you want to get your book into bookstores and certain other venues, if you self-publish in a certain way, that door will not necessarily be open to you.
Yep.
And so I feel like there's three models. There's a pure self-publishing where you just press the button on Amazon. And then there's a lot of hybrids, which sometimes I call pay to plays.
Yeah.
Some of them are pay to play where you pay a couple $1,000s and you get their distribution. And so it's sort of a split profit sharing, or there's a different, there's another model of you don't pay to play, but it's a different kind of a profit share. And of course, in that middle range, in all the ranges, you have to do your own promotion and advertising. But really the key that
stay there for half a second, because you fast forwarded through a critical point. And in all of those models, because those are business model decisions, right? So if you're in a position where you can get an advance, then you got to say, I got an advance, but what's the discounted cash flow for that, right? So if I'm getting and by the way, advances are scarce today, but if I'm getting a $1,000 advance and the book's going to be a great bestseller, did I just sell $1 for a dime? Like, was that a dumb business move?
Yes.
The point that you made that I think people don't understand is irregardless of the model, whether you've got Wiley, Random House, or Greenleaf, whoever, right? Congratulations, you're not just the titled author on the book, but you're the SVP of marketing, right?
Absolutely.
And if you don't understand that, you're going to have what I call sort of book postpartum, 90 days after.
True. And I've seen people do it. They go, I published a book, and then let the world have it. But the hustle it sounds so dumb, but to get people to review on Amazon is really quite a feat. You have to beg, borrow, and plead for people who genuinely like the book, but they won't.
And those are just family members. No,
yeah, they will. Yeah, it's true. But I think that something like that really counts. Getting people to review it, having a platform of of Twitter, of Facebook, of Instagram, of any other kind of social media, YouTube page, podcast. All of those avenues are part of the revenue model, and of course, how much time do you have to invest in that?
And dollars.
And dollars
to invest
in it. Yeah, because it's not cheap. If you hire a PR firm, it's interesting for fiction. I had a budget in mind of what I was willing to invest for promotion, which is a different number than my business book, because
the business book would probably be at a zero, just based on.
Yeah, I mean that it's true. So it's sort of fiction. That for me was a personal goal.
Sure.
And it felt wildly successful to get it done. And that fact that people enjoyed it was wonderful. But a business book is different, because that is part of my business model, and further, if you will, I guess, marketing of myself and my business. So it's different. So when I said purpose, it's what is the purpose is the purpose pleasure and you don't really care? Is the purpose to promote a certain model of your business or a style of your business, or legitimacy? A lot of people do legitimacy for speaking. Use that as a platform for that. So it's really
check the box. They've got the book.
So really what is, and I know it's but it is really a marketing question.
So let's talk about for you then. This is a good segue into sort of the business side of the house. What are your goals and objectives for the book? So when is the book coming out?
Well, hopefully my goal is the next, this year, to get a good solid draft, and then to figure out what is my best avenue of publication. I'm not sure yet until it's finished. So I'm
okay. Open. So you haven't committed to the publisher yet?
Yeah, well, my publisher who published my fiction is interested in this book too.
Okay, cool.
So I have an option. But I just have to decide when it's done which option benefits both myself and the book.
And interestingly, you're writing the book first, because that's one approach, not the only approach.
That's true. You could do. I mean, I have sent out proposals. So usually, I think unless you're quite famous, I think you have to write a lot of the book first.
Yeah, it depends. Either famous or have a massive following, or
some kind of famous, massive following. You're a professor of XYZ, and they've asked you to do so. But if you're sort of regular person, you probably should show that you can get a book complete.
Yeah, which is not an easy task in and of itself.
No, it isn't.
So let's move then to, it's now, blink fast forward 6 months post the book being out. What is the impact you're hoping it has on your business? And maybe before that, tell us a little bit about what the business is. What are you doing? What are the various business lines?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I have, of course, because I'm nonlinear, I have a variety of business lines.
I was going to guess that.
So I do, I'm an executive coach. I call it a leadership coach, and I work globally with my own private clients. Mm-hmm. So I like to have a small roster of clients, because I like to really keep what I do intimate. And so
I have small mean, is that 8, 10, 3, 5, like what's a?
Yeah, I do corporate clients and very few private clients. So if I work with a corporation, I'll coach a couple of executives, do it like that. And then, very small number, I said now it's kind of less than 3 private one-on-ones. It's mostly corporate. And then I also, I don't teach at INSEAD, but I do, executive leadership develop with them in a group form. And I travel all over the world to do that with them, which I absolutely love. It's wonderful work. Cool. It's intellectually stimulating. And I've gotten to go, of course, to Europe, to Saudi Arabia, and it's just really, it's exciting. And I do that with a couple of other organizations. Another one in London, KDVI, the Ketz DeVries Institute. And with them, I'm actually also teaching a certification for them. So I'm teaching there that certification of a 360 tool, which is nice. Which is 360 is evaluative for an executive. So that's exciting. And then I also do workshops and speaking as well.
So it sounds like everything that you're doing is dependent on you, right? So you've got this body of work, this body of knowledge.
Yeah.
But like many folks that we work with, if you're not in the room, whether that's physical or virtual, with the content, money's not changing hands.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Right. So it's based on me. So that's why collaborative work or having a book would be important to sort of expand the model.
Right. Right. So now you can move into whatever, go from sort of an analog universe to a blended analog digital.
Exactly.
Some digital,
Exactly.
some tools, some assessments, et cetera. And that's important because, I mean, my view, the world according to me, which may or may not be accurate at any point in time, is there's only three ways to make money with your ideas, right? You do more of what you're doing if you're not at capacity, whatever capacity means to you. You do more of what you're doing at a higher price point as your brand elevates and you start to solve bigger problems and you maybe have a book and all these other things. And then ultimately that caps out, right? Because you can't just say, I want to charge $1 million an hour. You know, that's not going to work.
That'd be nice, but
yeah. But then ultimately it's the digitization and the scaling of it, which gives you bigger impact, bigger reach and a higher level of monetization. So it sounds like you're in that sort of second bucket bordering into the,
it's sort of the interest in quality over quantity.
Yeah.
You know, so to have space, because if you're doing too much, then you can't write. So I want to have space to do other, creative avenues. Because when I'm flexing my creative muscle, I'm actually better for my clients.
Right. But but the clock's not running then, right? So if you need to take 20-30% of your time to sort of solve problems, think about things, research, be creative, whatever, that's non-billable work.
That's
so
true.
That's true.
That yeah. There's no annuity in brain power.
Well, and the reality is nobody's ever bought anybody's speaking business or one-on-one coaching business, right? There's no.
That's right, because it's me,
Right. There's no institutional value of that. You've got to, and there's not that that's good or bad, but if you'd like an exit, if you'd like to have the annuity, you've got to develop the business in ways that make that happen. So,
right.
Well, this has been cool. Any final words of nonlinear wisdom?
I think,
or linear wisdom, or whatever.
Or linear wisdom. Well, I feel like another of my philosophies is sort of to take yourselves holistically, like something that you do don't think writing a novel or doing a sport or playing guitar, whatever it is, has no value. I mean, Einstein used music to help him solve science problems. So sometimes I tell people to take what you're learning from whatever it is that's creative and see how you might leverage that in a more analytical or professional way.
I think that's really true because I can just, as you're saying that, I can think of several of clients off the top that do improv, are in jazz quartets, are magicians, are like all this, artists, all these interesting, crazy things that sort of the other side of them that, not that they keep it secret, but it's the non-public side of them that makes the public side of them better because
it's true.
It's
true. Or it's also problem solving because sometimes I'll say to a client, okay, so if you're doing magic, sort of take that approach and then shine that light onto a problem you're solving in the business world.
Exactly.
Just to give yourself a different perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And
it's been fun.
We tried to keep it nonlinear, so that's good.
That's right.
Maybe when we play this, we'll start in the beginning or in the middle, and you can go forward or backwards. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Take care.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.